Hello and welcome to the editorial analysis of the Hindu. Today we shall be discussing the editorial of the 5th of June. So coming to the first article, the immediate neighbourhood. The article is important. It is context with regards to India's neighbourhood, specifically from the lens of SAARC and what is the importance of SAARC. So SAARC as such can be a question, it is important. So from that context, you have to visit this particular article, you have to read it and study it. Now coming to the issues which are important. The first issue that is important here is with regards to the neighbourhood first policy of India. Now basically this was a policy that came in the year 2014. This was in the aftermath of Prime Minister Modi coming to power, and at that point of time he had invited almost all of India's neighbours and he had propounded this policy of neighbourhood first. Now in the year 2019, when he has been re-elected again for his swearing in ceremony, he has invited India's neighbours. So the idea is that the neighbourhood first policy is what is still continuing, but there is only one difference, that previously the focus was on the neighbours of SAARC, but now the focus is on the neighbours of the BIMSTEC. So in that particular context, this editorial is what has been written. Also the first visit of the Prime Minister is to Sri Lanka as well as to Maldives, so is what you should know, and of that of the Foreign Minister is to Bhutan. So these are again our neighbouring countries, which clearly reflects and asserts India's neighbourhood first policy. So that is the first analysis. The second issue is with regards to SAARC versus BIMSTEC. Now I told you that in the first case it was the focus was in SAARC, and now the neighbours that are important are the BIMSTEC neighbours. This does not include Pakistan. It does not include Afghanistan, and this does not include Maldives as compared to the other countries that are included in SAARC. So these are the only three SAARC countries which are not included in the BIMSTEC. But for Maldives, an exception is what has been made, where Prime Minister is going directly. For Afghanistan, this is at present in turmoil, and it is primarily to isolate Pakistan that the policy shift is what has happened. Now coming to SAARC itself is what you should know something about SAARC. Now basically SAARC is what came up after a charter that was signed in the year 1985. And basically this institution or this particular cooperation agreement is what has come to a failure in the political sphere only. Otherwise, as such, this resulted in a lot of cooperation, but politically this has failed because of India-Pakistan rivalry. So that is one issue. In the past 34 years, only 18 times is when the heads of states of SAARC have met, and for the past 5 years there has been no meeting. So clearly SAARC is not existing as of now. It has become very much weak is what is being said here. Next, coming to BIMSTEC. About the BIMSTEC, you should know this is what was developed almost 10 years after SAARC. It came into existence in the year 1997, but up till the year 2014 this had no secretariat also. So this has come into prominence only recently after SAARC is what has been signed off by India and Pakistan clearly. So this is what has been mentioned, but in the past 22 years only 4 summits of BIMSTEC is what has taken place. Now another analysis which is being drawn here is that BIMSTEC is not a replacement to SAARC. When it was made also, this was only an addition but not a substitution to SAARC. For example, it was a bridge between South Asia and Southeast Asia. It was being believed to be a connection between SAARC as well as the ASEAN. So this was something that was to add to cooperation rather than replace or substitute. So that is what is important. Another analysis is being drawn in the context of SAARC versus the SCO. SCO is the Shanghai Cooperation Organization. So what is important here is that in the context of SAARC, India and Pakistan are not cooperating, they are not meeting with each other. But when it comes to the SCO, then in that context, both India and Pakistan are members of the SCO. They were both incorporated in the SCO in the year 2017. And in the context of the SCO summit, both India and Pakistan are meeting each other. So the editorial is saying that when they are holding meetings in the context of SCO, why are they not holding meetings in the context of SAARC? Another issue is that in the context of SAARC, both India and Pakistan are important countries. They are the biggest countries. Whereas when it comes to the SCO, the major countries are Russia and China. So why is it that both India and Pakistan want to meet each other under subordination of two major countries rather than as leaders, as independent leaders as such? So that is one analysis which is being drawn. Another major issue or roadblock to SAARC has been the various connectivity projects. This basically includes the MVA, which was the Motor Vehicle Agreement. Now this is what was not passed, but the editorial is discussing that it is not basically because of India-Pakistan that the MVA couldn't be realized under SAARC, because a separate body under SAARC was formed, which was the BBIN, which was comprised of Bhutan, Bangladesh, India and Nepal. But even the BBIN couldn't go ahead with the MVA. So clearly the problem was not in the SAARC. Also, another connectivity project was the idea of a South Asia satellite, which was mooted by Prime Minister Modi. This is what has again not been fulfilled. So to replace these kind of problems in SAARC, the issue or the idea that has been suggested is the ASEAN minus X. Now basically this is a strategy that is being followed by the ASEAN. What happens is that if there is a policy or if there is a project that has to be implemented by the ASEAN, to which all the member countries are not agreeing, then in that situation this idea of ASEAN minus X is what is imposed. Here what happens is that all the countries that are agreeing, they go ahead with the project, and all the other countries who are not agreeing, they do not join it, and they are free to join it at any point of time when they think it's right for them. So this is one idea that even SAARC can use, so that at least the projects are what can be implemented, and this organization itself is not what is dead and it can be revived. So that is what has been discussed. Another thing that has been discussed in the context of SAARC is the importance of SAARC. Now basically SAARC is indeed important for India. This is primarily because if India has good relations with its neighbors, then this is what can act as a force multiplier for India's power projection, is what is being discussed here. Another issue which is important is the China factor. China has made inroads in almost all the South Asian countries, and for this what is important is that the South Asian countries be united, and for this what is important is that SAARC be revived. So entirely this editorial is saying that SAARC is important even today and SAARC should be revived. So that is the entire gist of this particular article. It is very, very important in the context of India-Pakistan. It is important for international relations as such. So a question is what you can definitely expect. So that is the relevance. Coming to the next article, decolonizing the Chagos Archipelago. Now basically what has happened here is that the United Nations General Assembly has voted in the favor of Chagos Archipelago being freed from UK's control. Now this is the context of this particular article. The topic is important for General Studies paper 1 primarily, where colonization and decolonization is the topic. Also in international relations this is important. So coming to the issues, first and foremost, you should know about the Diego Garcia. Now basically this Diego Garcia, I don't know if I'm pronouncing it right, but that is how it can be pronounced as of now, Diego Garcia. Now basically this is what is a US military base in this archipelago. Now what has happened here is that one island is completely dedicated for this military base in the Indian Ocean region, and it is for this primary reason that UK does not wish to allow that this particular island be taken away from it and it be returned to Mauritius. So that is one major controversy that is emerging between these two countries, and this island is what has been leased by UK to the US, and this military base is that of US. So this is what you should know. Now in the context of history, what you should know is that it was in the year 1965 that this decision was taken to separate Diego Garcia from the entire other islands, or this other group of islands in the particular region. But Mauritius got its independence from UK in the year 1968. So after Mauritius became independent, this region should have been restored back to Mauritius, but this is what has not happened as of now. So this is what is the major controversy. Another thing that is important here is the issue of human rights. Now what has happened here is that approximately 1,500 Chagosians, the people who were living here, natives who were living here, were expelled from this particular region, and this was what has resulted in a depopulation of this particular region. So this is what is being believed as a human rights violation in this particular region by UK as well as by United States of America. So that is the issue. Another issue that is important here is with regards to the ICJ judgment. The International Criminal Justice judgment has been given by this particular court. This judgment was what was given in the month of February, and this judgment said that the decolonization of the Chagos was incomplete, and the United Kingdom was obligated to complete the decolonization process and return the islands back. So that is the judgment that was given. Clearly this was not accepted by the UK nor by the US. Now, what are the arguments that United Kingdom gives in its favor? It says first and foremost is that it had declared this region as the British Indian Ocean Territory, and that is why it is very much under the United Kingdom. The second issue is that this is what is important for providing maritime security in this particular region, especially against the terrorists, organizational crime and piracy, and as a result of which this military base at Chagos Garcia is what is important. But here you need to understand that Mauritius is nowhere saying that this particular island is, or this particular military base is what should be removed. It is clearly in the favor that very much this island or this particular military base is what should be sustained here. But the issue is that sovereignty of Mauritius is what needs to be recognized here. So that is the entire issue. Another issue that is important is the stand of African Union. African Union has supported Mauritius's stand, and it is said that even in Africa at present a large number of areas are still not decolonized, which is unacceptable in the 21st century. So that is the stand of Africa. In the context of India, you should know India has also supported the claim of Mauritius. India has said that these islands and the sovereignty of Mauritius is what should be recognized. So that is India's stand. You should know about that. Also, what is important is the geostrategic chain. Now, this is an important analysis. Now, basically, in the past, what happened was that India was clearly against any other foreign country interfering in the Indian Ocean. But what has happened at present is that in the Indian Ocean, China has made its presence felt. And also in the South China Sea, China has become an important factor. So to balance China, it has now become important that major players also come and have their bases set up in the Indian Ocean, so the dominance of China is what can be neutralized. So in that context, now India has a difficult choice, because India would also not want this military base of the US to go away from this particular island. So that is one issue that is important. Also in the context of India, US, you need to understand, this being a military base of the US, India has signed an agreement with the US, which is the LIMA, that stands for the Logistic Exchange Memorandum of Agreement. So this, based on this LIMA agreement, both India and US can share the armed forces of both India as well as US are entitled to share the military bases of both these countries. So in that context also, India has interest in this particular military base. So that is one issue. So the solution that can be forged out in this particular scenario is that the sovereignty rights of Mauritius should be given back to Mauritius. UK should accept the sovereignty of Mauritius over the Chagos Archipelago, but definitely this military base is what should be sustained, and for sustaining this military base, this island is what should be leased out by Mauritius to further United Kingdom as well as to US, and that is how both the parties will have a benefit in this particular issue. So that is what has been discussed, and that is one solution that has been issued. The article is important from the context of international relations. Questions what you can definitely expect. So that is the importance of this particular article. Coming to the next article, low tactics. Now, the context of this article are some cycle of undiplomatic behaviors that are taking place between India and Pakistan. Now, basically what had happened was that recently, in the backdrop of the holy month of Ramzan going on, there was an iftar party that was held in Pakistan, and to this iftar party a lot of people were invited. Now basically this was a party that was held by the Indian High Commission in Pakistan. Now a number of Pakistanis were invited for this particular party, but what happened here was that those who were invited were stopped from going to this particular it was sort of a private meet, and it was not an official meet, but still they were stopped. And those who did come to this particular party, what happened was that their vehicles were towed away. So this was somehow unacceptable. India criticized this kind of a behavior by the forces in Pakistan. Similar complaints are what Pakistan often has against India. Pakistan says that India has not allowed sometimes the construction workers to come to the Pakistan embassy to make some repairs. So these kind of issues are what continuously keep happening, and these issues are what have been called as, these behaviors are what have been called as undiplomatic behavior. So this is a key word in itself. Now the issues that are important, first and foremost, is with regards to the Vienna Convention. Both India and Pakistan are signatory to the Vienna Convention, which lays down some new rules for diplomatic protocol, and under this particular convention, such kind of behavior is what is unacceptable. Another issue is that this kind of a behavior vitiates the atmosphere. Already the atmosphere between India and Pakistan is one of being highly tense, and further this kind of behavior will vitiate the atmosphere, which was not acceptable. Another issue is that this kind of episodes divert from the main issues. Already we have a lot of issues to resolve between between India and Pakistan. But when such kind of undiplomatic behavior is what takes place, then there is a diversion from main issues, is what the editorial is saying. So these are the three issues that have been discussed. Whenever you are discussing India-Pakistan relation, try and bring out this analysis of undiplomatic behavior. So this is going to add more depth to your answer. It's going to add another plan or another strategy to your answer. So this is why it is important, and that is the relevance of this particular article. Now coming to the next article, fine-tuning the education policy. Now the context here, as obvious, is the national education policy. It is basically the draft of the national education policy which has been released for the year 2019. Now basically what is important in this particular context is that at present this is only a draft. This is nothing very final, but still some points are what have been suggested. If a question comes on education, even an essay can come on education. There are some good points that have been mentioned in this policy, and this is what you can replicate in your essay. So that is how you have to use it. Now coming to the issues which are important, first and foremost you should know about the details, some details about this particular draft national education policy is what you should know. Now first and foremost you should know that this has drawn inputs from TSR Subramaniam Committee report. This was also a report on education system in India, a very major report. So it has drawn upon that particular report. Also it has drawn upon some data from Ministry of Human Resource and Development, and this draft is what has been prepared by K. Kasturi Rangan Committee. So the name of the committee is what becomes very, very important in this particular context. You should remember K. Kasturi Rangan Committee has prepared the national education policy. Also what is important here is the idea of lifelong education. Now basically this entire policy is what is very new. It is a breath of fresh air because it talks about some newer ideas, and one amongst them is the idea of having a lifelong education. This is not only limited to schools. It talks about higher education, school education, which conventionally all education policies are talking about, but this also talks about vocational education, which is for the adults, and it also talks about other education for adults. So this is how it is new. So this is one idea that you should replicate if there is a scope under any question on education. Another issue is with regards to school education. At present, the RTE covers an age group of 6 to 14 only, but this new education policy is saying that this age group is what needs to be extended from 3 to 18 years, which means that 3 years are going to be increased for the early childhood care and education. This is one thing that is important, and this is what has been decided primarily because according to several reports, 85% of a child's mind is what is developed up till 6 years. So for that to tap into the most potent years in a child's life, it is important that this age group also be covered under the RTE. So that is what has been mentioned, and also another 3 years are what are going to be added into the senior secondary education. So that is what is also accepted or believed to be added under the right to education. So that is what this particular policy has suggested. Also this policy is calling for some innovative ideas. For example, it is calling for a universal foundational literacy and numeracy idea. It is through initiatives like National Tutors Program, as well as reintroduction of school complexes. A system of modular board examinations is what has been proposed. Flexibility in the curriculums is what has been proposed. Also setting up special education zones in disadvantaged regions is what has been talked about. Recognizing teachers at the heart of the systems is what has been called for. Moving teacher education into the university system is what has been talked upon. Also stressing the importance of learning new languages is what is there amongst the key recommendations of this particular policy. So you should make a note of all of these recommendations. In my personal opinion, for the means of this year, national education policy is going to be one of the most important questions. So in that context, you must be well versed with this one topic. Now lastly, this editorial is discussing about some challenges that are faced by this particular policy. The first challenge is that of funding itself. There is a proposal to increase the funding to 6% of the GDP. Now where is this public funding going to come from is a major controversial issue. So that is what the editorial is discussing. Also, it is discussing about an issue of increasing expenditure on education to 20% from the current 10% that states are doing. So that is again a major challenge. Also, it is discussing that there is a challenge of the Central Institution of Indian Languages. Now, basically, the National Education Policy has called for increasing the importance of languages, especially Indian languages like Prakrit, Nepali, Sanskrit, Persian. Now basically instead of the challenge that is being discussed here is that instead of setting up new institution, first and foremost the already existing institution needs to be upgraded, which is the Central Institution of Indian Languages present in Mysuru. So that is what is being advocated in this particular article. Also the editorial is discussing that the challenge that is being faced is that if you want to include this age group of 3 years to 6 years in the RTE, so that cannot happen overnight. For this, a lot of requirement is what is there. First and foremost, infrastructure will be required. For example, even basic infrastructure like toilets is what is going to be required for children as young as 3 to 6 years. So that is one thing that the government has to focus upon first. Also, teacher vacancies are what are there very, very high in schools. Teacher vacancies are what need to be done. Teacher training is what need to be done. Other helper staff is what is going to be required. So all of these issues are what are there, and as a result of which the editorial is discussing that to meet this is what is a challenging task. Another issue is with regards to something called the RSA. Now basically this RSA is the Rashtriya Shiksha Ayog. This is going to be a body right under the Prime Minister, and this is what is going to be a body that is going to talk about education of several types of fields. For example, even the agricultural studies will be here, the law studies will be here, also the medical education will be here. So the editorial is saying that this is what is going to be a major challenge, because there will be conflicts between all of these different sectors, and for that matter what is going to happen of the recent reforms like the National Medical Commission Bill, which was specific to the sector of medical education. So these are some controversies, or these are some issues which need to be ironed out vis-a-vis the national education policy. We will have several other articles coming up on this, because as of now this is only open for suggestions. So a lot of suggestions will go, then another draft is what is going to come out. So at that point of time a lot of articles on this is what will come. So by that time we will become well versed with it. But this was the first article on NEP, and indeed this was important. Now coming to the next article for more inclusive private schools. Now basically this is an article that is reviewing the right to education, but this is not reviewing right to education in an all encompassing manner. Rather it is very, very selective. It is focusing on only one aspect of RTE, which is context with regards to the section 12(1)(c) of the RTE. Now basically it was this particular section 12(1)(c). This mandated all private schools to allocate 25% of the seats to economically weaker sections. Now the editorial is discussing that despite this thing being, this one aspect being present in the law itself, this is what has not been efficiently fulfilled by the private schools. This is because there are still a large number of vacancies that are there in these private schools, and also there is an issue that is there that often when advertising is what is done, it is not done in a manner in a manner that it is popularized or people know about these kind of vacancies. Also what is important is that the window for admission process into this 25% of the seats is very small, and as a result of it large number of students are unable to take the benefit of this particular law. So this is one thing. Also what I found particularly important in this editorial was the idea of some keywords that were used, which I found very, very important. Otherwise in my opinion this article is very, very selective. It is only discussing one aspect of RTE, and question on this single aspect is what is doubtful. But definitely if a question does come on RTE, you must highlight that this one particular point, that RTE has particularly failed on section 12(1)(c). So it will be important to bring about this point, but not as a complete analysis of RTE. So coming to the keywords, first keyword here is that the private schools are what are islands of privileged classes. So that is how you can quote them. Also one quote is what I found here, one statement that is very, very important, and I think it will become very, very important for your essay paper. It says that it is important for India that India should make children not just better learners but better human beings. So if this equality is what is there in the schools, then students will become better human beings rather than only better learners. So try and bring out these kind of ideas in your answers. It gives a good impression. These kind of statements are always handy. If you have prepared them, they will be always handy for you in writing your answers in mains. So that is how you have to utilize them, and that's about this particular article. And that's about our discussion today. We had a lot of articles in this particular newspaper. 5 articles were what were relevant. So that's about these particular articles, and I thank you all for watching the video.